It's an obvious one, while they call it the demon drink. It changes our perception and how we all think. We're convinced we need it there, on every special occasion, a lifestyle passed down for the last generation. Back when we were weans, it was a bottle of cider, young team in the Mad Dog, carry out for a fiver. It's how we grew up, a coming of age, to have misspent our youth the only way we'd engage. An outcome that's bleak, or that's what we're told, because the more hope we have, the less drink that is sold. You'll get sucked into the cycle, and 10 years disappear. Groundhog Day on repeat, waking up with a fear. Because it's a chemical imbalance you've created in the brain by binging every weekend, but you wouldn't dare to abstain. And the years pass on by, it's a regular occurrence. You'd think that the hangover would act like deterrence. But we deal with the hangovers as a necessary evil. It's mass-produced poison. It's perfectly legal. Mad wet and loving life, well, that's what you claim. Well, what happened last night? And then creeps the shame. Because it's a foregone conclusion, after a night on the wine, the witness a personality in steady decline. It goes hand in hand in most situations. Society's convinced us to have no reservations. Rewards and celebrations, it ticks both those boxes. Depression or breakup, let's load up on toxins. Can you believe we pour poison straight down our neck? And we'll pour it a double to gain more respect. Straight up ethanol, your wee mind in pieces. Every late night long weekend, the anxiety increases. Our nation is hooked. They've played a pure blinder with battle scars and charge sheets to serve as a reminder. And the maddest of weekends, drink-fueled aggravation, and only the lucky ones make the realisation that the drink's no your friend and life's gone in a blink. So time to wisen up and dry out. No more demon drink. I started writing poetry by accident, really. So I retrained as a clinical hypnotherapist a few years ago. Up until that point, I had run an accountancy firm for many years, so separate ends of the spectrum, I would say. And when I opened my therapy centre after the first year, servicing clients, quite a lot of what I was doing, I was working with anger, addiction and anxiety. And after the first year, I penned a poem to say thank you for all the people that had been through the door. And that was probably the first poem that I had wrote since maybe school. And I think I got like the bug for it. So the first poem I wrote was The Demon Drink, and that was for clients that were struggling with alcohol. So I would give them their treatment plan, and then I would attach this poem to the email that I would send them after the session. The next poem that I wrote was The Devil's Dandruff, about cocaine, and then Wake and Bake, which was about people that had been abusing cannabis. Once I started sending those to clients, they were like, I think you should put this online or send it, and it would potentially help more people. The first poem I put on was The Demon Drink, and it went viral. I think it hit like 1 million views in 4 or 5 days or something like that. So, and from that, the feedback that I got encouraged me to write a wee bit more, and I started veering away from addiction-based poems and started writing just about like Scottish life and things that we can all really relate to. And that inspired me to keep writing more, because of the feedback that I was getting, a lot of people could connect with it, and it started bringing a lot of joy and memories out for people as well. So it's been fun. My day job is something that's got a lot of compliance and it's quite heavy. So this is a bit of light relief for me, I think. A lot of people think that every poem that I wrote is one of my stories. Quite a lot of it's fiction as well, but quite a lot of it is maybe based on truth. So it's a poem that's been inspired by a character that I've met in my life. And if it's a poem that is fiction, I'll maybe start it off and I'll maybe sit in my notes for a couple of weeks before I'll go back and put another couple of verses in. And it might take me a couple of months to actually finish it. Maybe the second month I get contacted to ask if I wanted to put these poems in print, if somebody could publish them for me. I'm quite entrepreneurial, I always have been, so that immediately just made me think, well, can I do this myself? And I then made steps to contact a printer, a publisher, and I published Poetic Justice for Glesga, and that was on the 1st of April last year, I think. Yeah, 1st of April last year. And then, again, as I said, I felt as if I sort of unlocked something when I started writing, so I kept going, and by Christmas, I had actually put out 6 poetry books and 1 children's book. I think a lot of people associate poetry with like Rabbie Burns and a language that they don't really relate to. So I think telling stories that are familiar, telling stories that are relatable, talking about problems, being vulnerable is something that I think people need to quite often match your energy when you're vulnerable about something. So, for example, I do a lot of work with prisons now, and I hosted a recovery circle in HMP Shotts a few months ago. And one of the poems that I told in there got a really emotional response from all the guys in the room. And it was probably the last thing that I expected to get when I was in that sort of setting, was raw emotion and tears from guys that are painted as real hard men. But I think that's one thing that I've noticed that poetry does. It allows emotion to come out of people, and it allows a raw connection to be formed. And if you find that you share that memory with somebody, or if you share that emotion that is being conveyed in the poem, it's hard not to express that. And I think that's what I enjoy so much about it, finding out that people have got such similar backgrounds and we've all walked a similar sort of path and we might all have a similar sort of journey. A lot of people are closed books, and things like this open people up to discussion and to talk about their emotions. You will get all my books online. So I've got a website, www.theweeglesgapoet.co.uk. You can also, there's links to them on all my socials as well. You'll be able to find, all my socials are at The Wee Glesga Poet. Sammy Lamb. Sammy Lamb worked in the Scrappy at least 4 days out of 7, with a wee side gig as a man with a van to supplement his living. A single man for most of his life, no romance on the cards. His work, the pub, a pint and a fag, fishing and camping under the stars. But Sammy had a secret. Well, in certain circles it was common knowledge that Sammy took the speed every morning, a wee gram stirred in his porridge. Well, I say it was speed, but it was actually paste, speed, but in its rawest form. And Sammy needed it like clockwork every day at the crack of dawn. He honestly cannot remember a day that wasn't flavoured with this paste, a gram measured out in a Smarties cap and jamming his porridge to hide the taste. But it really set him up for the day, or so he's convinced himself. But over the years, it's took its toll, and now he's built like the side of a shelf. And to make things more affordable, he started punting a wee bit himself, concerned about the pennies, aye, but no a thought for his diminishing health. Because as a result of this habit, his face had transformed over time, withered, wrinkled and haggard, and no longer in his prime. With 4 rotten teeth left in his head, surrounded by a row of mere stumps, gums red raw from years of gummin, and a couple of sinister looking lumps. But he put all that to the back of his mind, and he churned away in the scrapping. As long as he had his paste and his porridge every morning, it kept him happy. But last year, in the height of the summer, his regular supplier ran dry, and he fished out his stash at the back of the freezer, his emergency supply. And that kept him going for almost a week, as he made calls daily to score. But his dealer says paste no the easiest thing to come by anymore. Can I interest you in a bit of coke? It's 6 and half a dozen. You'll get a much cleaner buzz. Amphetamine could be like cocaine's cousin. Sammy declines, he'll try again, and maybe the morrow he'll have more luck. But the first 24 hours without this in this system, and the poor guy's rattling like fuck. So he starts chapping doors from his distant past, and faces are shocked to see Sammy appears, sweating his brow, begging, pleading for a bit of speed. And after doing his rounds, calling in a couple of old favours, he gets his hand in a gram of paste, wrapped in a cigarette paper, and he sits the bomb on his tongue, and the paper melts away, and the bitter powder paints each 4 of those withered teeth that still remain. But right out of character for Sammy Lamb, this was always just a morning routine. But a bomb in his tongue at 6 p.m. means by morning every hour he'll have seen. And just like that, dawn was here. Sammy hangs by a thread. He managed to kip about 3 a.m. For a few hours he'd rested his head. But he makes a call to the scrappy. His body's just no fit. The first time in 20 odd years that he's ever phoned in sick. So pacing the flare, considering options, he calls his dealer one more time. And after ringing and ringing, he's still hanging on the line. But eventually he answers. Unfortunately, he's no good news. But cocaine is still in the menu if you would like options to peruse. With a sigh of desperation, Sammy agrees. Let's see what it's like. Gram swiftly delivered, lying out on the table, and Sammy's as high as a kite. Now this continued these days into night, racking up lines in a wee metal tray. Morning arrives, he phones a Scrappy again. What else was he going to do? And right after that, I call his dealer. This time a larger order is placed to ensure he can portion out what he has to get him through the days. But as much as this package delivered, in theory, should last a lot longer, this powder wasn't like the paste at all. The desire for it, so much stronger. And that first night with a rock on the table, the hours just passed in a blink. And day 3 of phoning the Scrappy, telling him he's still spewing in the sink. No bother, Sammy, you're off till next week. I'll see you then, my man. Sammy hangs up, breathes a sigh of relief. He'll square up by then, that's the plan. This stuff was a different level for Sammy. He knew he was taking more, quicker. Pasting the flare, flicking through channels, and through his chest he feels the beat of his ticker. But nothing else for it, he keeps powering through, firmly in the cocaine clutch, not knowing when the body will decide that's it, enough is finally enough. So the rock not even really dented, Sammy racks up another line, snorts it up the note in his horn, like he's done every other time. And as he took that sharp inhale, he felt something burst in his chest, as he collapsed back on the couch and fearfully gasped for a breath. The lights went out for Sammy that night, but it took until Monday evening before anyone came looking and knocking the door. The boys at the Scrappy said when they were leaving, "Let's go swing by Sammy's pad. It's no like him not to lift the phone, and you wouldn't like to think something had happened. You know he stays on his own." So the boys for the Scrappy turn up and they're chatting, but their knocks, they fall on dead ears. And as one of them looks through the letterbox, it confirmed the worst of their fears. Poor Sammy propped up against the couch, rolled up note and powder spilled on the floor. So the biggest boy for the Scrappy puts the hinges right after the door. They peer around at the mess in Sammy's flat. They knew they'd arrived too late. The big game puts the rock in his pocket. He wouldn't want it to go to waste. And that sums up that grip so well. The clutches of cocaine, with the dregs of powder from a dead man's pile, wouldn't even sound insane.